Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this Thursday afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by JP Mason. Loads to catch up on, JP. The sun is shining. We're heading for a treble, but not as all.
At snail's pace.
Not all as well. You're right. You're spot on. I go back to last season when Brendan Rodgers he got to the business end of the season and he was being spoken to in a press conference. He said, "This is when we come alive," and he was right, and we did. And there were certain players that came alive for him and more or less re-energized the side. It feels like we need that again, JP, at this moment.
Yeah, I was listening to what you were saying. I think it was on Monday when you were sort of flying the flag for certain players coming back into the side, and I don't know, just showing a bit of enthusiasm, and I guess a perfect person in that sense is James Forrest, and that because he's been out for so long. You know, if I ever miss a few games in a row on a Tuesday playing, I'm itching to get back. You know, that third or fourth week, and that's me playing at the lowest of the low levels. No disrespect to anybody that I play with, but nobody's paying in to watch us, are they? But when you're a professional football player and you've been out for that length of time, then I would, even at James Forrest's stage in his career when he's won everything and is possibly considered to be a senior pro, I would expect him to still come in as he did on Sunday and try to affect the game. And in that sense, when you've been dropping your first choice right winger twice at half time in recent weeks, I don't think anybody, particularly Nicolas Kuhn, could complain if James Forrest came in and took his jersey off him on Saturday.
Well, if we start on the right-hand side, JP, I do think it comes down to, as well as the energy, what I was trying to say, it's a winning mentality, because a few people, and I expected this, have disagreed with some of the changes I would make, and that's what it's all about. The two main changes that have caused a bit of division were the two guys on the left-hand side. It's Greg Taylor and Liam Scales. And people come back to me and say, well, you know, you weren't slow in criticising these guys when they were playing. Well, the big game for me, where the pair of them were absolutely off it, was the 3-0 defeat at Ibrox. But I think that the whole team were, to be honest, JP, right? But that side of the park was, for me, the worst of all the performers that particular day. But my point is this: these guys have won doubles or trebles or both with Celtic. They know how to get the job done. Are they better technically than the guys they're replacing? Maybe not. But Kuhn's a classic example of this, and it's good to start with him. I would say Nicolas Kuhn is our best right winger at the football club, but he's not playing like the best right winger at the football club. Now, you and I can only speculate about the reasons around it. We've probably heard every possibility this week, JP, from picking up an injury, carrying something, to heads out the door, you know, the agent's in his ear, etc. We don't know. We can only surmise. But what we do know is that his performance level has been miles off it. Absolutely miles off it. And for weeks. And I had been saying originally, without trying to be knee-jerk, I said, you know, let them play through it. There are certain players that come through that patchy bit of form, and they're probably better for it, galvanises them, then they go through a purple patch. I think we've seen that this season with the likes of Engels. I think Hatate at various times this season has been good and bad. But Kuhn doesn't seem to be able to click for some reason, JP, and it's affecting the entire right-hand side of the park. Johnson is off form as well. I think Engels is probably off form at the moment. But Kuhn, what do you think? Because as Celtic fans, you start worrying, don't you? You think, worst case scenario, his head's been turned.
I mean, if it has, fair enough. I mean, you want people at the club that are going to do it week in, week out, season in, season out. You don't want somebody that just does it for the first 4 or 5 months of the season. And I'm pretty sure we spoke about this before. It's, you know, prospective buyers that are looking at him will look across the whole season. They don't just go, oh, well, he was really good for the first 3 or 4 months, scored against Bayern Munich in the Allianz. Therefore, let's give Celtic 15, 20 million for him. I think they've got to look at a bigger sample size. And I would have thought that you despite him posting numbers that he's got on the board so far this season, it does sort of drop off massively, like in the last 3 or 4 months, and that's a sad thing to see, because you were looking at those numbers at that time. Remember, Brendan Rodgers even made a joke about it in a presser where he said, Nicolas Kuhn, I'm not giving Nicolas Kuhn the assist, he's got too many or something like that. He kind of made a laugh about it.
Yeah.
He's not laughing now, is he? He wasn't laughing at McDermott Park on Sunday. Neither were any of us, the 3 stands of us that were there. We left at, half 9, 10 a.m. in the morning. Didn't get home till, I went straight to work after it to do the Northside show. So it was an extremely long day and night for me. I'm not for a tiny violin or anything like that. Obviously, it was my choice to go to the game ahead of working. But I just, as I said on Sunday, we didn't get into that game for free. Everybody paid £34 a ticket, and the least you expect to see is your team putting in bare minimum of 6 7s out of 10, and there was few and far between of them, I'd say.
You know the thing for me, JP, absolutely. We'll get into your weekend as well, by the way, because that's what we do on this show. With that peach, Dermo reminded me it was a peach on the front cover of that Northside vinyl you've got there. Nicolas Kuhn, I was looking at this in respect to Arne Engels. We'll get to Arne Engels in a moment. By the way, let us know in your comments what you think is the issue. Who do you think should drop out this weekend, and how will it go? I also want you to let me know your thoughts on the Daily Express story that they incorrectly ran on blaming the Green Brigade for assaulting somebody at the game. Absolute nonsense. And Liam Carrigan wrote a brilliant blog about that. I want you to hear your thoughts on this, because Liam did a bit of investigative journalism, JP, and debunked quite a lot of the information that the Express has already published. Obviously, we know what the outcome of the Cherny Watergate incident is going to be as well. Let's know your thoughts on that one. And of course, yesterday we dedicated the vast majority of the show to the Alan Muir sacking. I mean, let's be honest, he's been sacked, right? And they found him a position elsewhere, counting paper clips somewhere at SFA Towers. So I'll be getting your thoughts on that one, JP, and also the thoughts of everybody else in the comments section. But Kuhn, I was looking at Kuhn, and it's quite similar, actually, when I look at Engels, who we'll get on to, right? So you look at where Kuhn has come from, and we sign him from Rapid Vienna. But to try and understand the trajectory of his career, JP, you've got to look a wee bit further back, and obviously he spent time as a youth player at St. Pauli. It'd be interesting to see him in a St. Pauli jersey. He also spent some time with RB Leipzig before going to Ajax, Bayern Munich, and then he found his feet at Rapid Vienna. So when you look at that, you say to yourself, well, he never made it at Leipzig, Ajax, or Bayern Munich, teams where there's an expectation level. I'm not saying it's the exact same as where Celtic are, but there's an expectation level for success. There's a winning mentality required to play at some of these football clubs. And he didn't. He never made a first-team appearance for any of the 3 of them. So then he's found his feet at Rapid Vienna, where he won nothing. So although he was one of the kind of guys that stood out, JP, and he was a star player for a Rapid Vienna, they didn't win anything. Right, so it's about mentality for me. And then you look at, and this is more relevant when I come to Engels, and one of the points I'm going to make with him. You look at the games, per season that Nicolas Kuhn has played in his entire career. So you're looking at 5, 21, 17, 16, 21, 27, 29. You've then got the season that he signs for Celtic. He had made 22 appearances when he signed for us. He then makes 18. And this season alone, he's made 44. And I'm not making excuses, but some of these guys are not used to the intensity of playing for Celtic. And they're not used to the mentality of playing for Celtic as well, JP. And I think that he, and maybe Engels to a lesser degree, but Nicolas Kuhn is finding that out, unfortunately, to his detriment this season.
Yeah, well, you probably, when you think of it like that, you're thinking, I'm pretty sure many managers have said in pressers, "Oh, I don't look at the table," or I don't know. I know one manager that definitely said that this season, and he's no longer in situ in a job in Glasgow. But you want that mentality from the players that it doesn't matter what the table says. It doesn't matter that, you know, we're 13 points clear with a huge goal difference advantage as well. Let's not forget that. I mean, it's almost double.
As good as a point. It's as good as a point, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's almost double what the nearest team have scored. And you just want that. You want them to think there's no difference. There's no points difference every week. You got to treat each game like that. I mean, I'm sorry, but to get beat off St Johnstone, I don't care. You can say what you like about them scrapping for points, and they're in a different fight to us. That's completely unacceptable to lose that game. You know, a draw at the bare minimum, which it would have been what you'd expect to come away with. But to lose to that team who are going to get bounced out of this league and will probably lose this weekend after, you know, they said the keeper who was given man of the match, he played well. I don't think he was Fraser Forster levels against Barcelona or anything like that. He didn't have so much to do. I don't really recall him being overly worked. A couple of saves here and there, but he said after the game, he was like, this game means nothing if we don't go and get 3 points next week. Would you bet on them getting 3 points at the weekend? Probably not. Somebody actually said they'll not get an easier game than that against Celtic because they were up against a team that weren't putting the effort in, weren't, you know, really going hell for leather trying to get the victory or even trying to get a point. I mean, I remember getting beat off St Johnstone at home. I'm pretty sure it was under the Vengos season. Nick Dasovic, if you remember him.
Oh, I do remember him. Yes.
Scored an absolute raker. And it's the only, I can say this confidently, it's the only time that I've willingly left Celtic Park before the end of a game. As in, it was a horrible, it was a Tuesday night, it was raining, it was cold. And I was like, we're not getting back into this. And I left with about 15, 20 minutes to go. And right enough, the scoreline remained the same. And I sat on the bus in the bus park, mildly regretting my sort of bratish behaviour, like leaving my seat. But I was scunnered is the word. And we obviously didn't leave early on Sunday, but I honestly had this really bad feeling that we weren't going to get that goal and it was going to stay as it was. And lo and behold, it did. So really, really disappointing to lose that game on Sunday. I wasn't going into it with the mindset of, we're going to squish this. It's going to be 4-5, whatever score we want. I did think it would be tight. It always is. It was tight when we won there in the last minute with Giakoumakis, if you remember. Yeah. James McCarthy's finest moment in a Celtic shirt when he has the secondary assist for right. I think Erneby put the ball in and Giakoumakis scored. I really, really didn't see that happening on Sunday. And obviously, you're in the back of your mind, you're wanting it to happen, but I just didn't. There was a kind of weird atmosphere. The fact that we had the 3 stands, it was just like it felt like someone had set us up for a party that everybody knew wasn't going to be the party that it should have been, and it could have and should have been had we got points on the board that led up to that game. It was just a really, really odd. It was an odd atmosphere all round.
It's interesting, though, that belief that you're always going to get a goal. That's something that, for a vast spell in my Celtic supporting life, I've always believed that we're going to get back into the game when we go a goal down, particularly to an early goal as we did at the weekend there, JP. You always kind of think there's a belief, it's embedded in you. It's all right, we'll score a couple. But as the game progressed, I had less and less, a bit like yourself, less and less belief. I like to wait until half time because often over the last couple of seasons, Brendan Rodgers' teams have performed in one half only, and you think, right, we've got the bad half out of our system here, and let's go on and win this game. But as it kind of dragged on, you did get a sense that this is not happening today. The energy wasn't right. And all it takes for me is you can carry 1 or 2 players, JP. Most teams can carry 1 or 2. But when there's this malaise, when there's a comfort zone, I think it's been described as, when you've got too many players in that comfort zone, then you're thinking to yourself, right, it's going to be really, really difficult to get us out of that groove because the tempo's been set. The game has been set, if you like, right? And then it's hard to absolutely flip that. Back in the days of maybe Ange, making 5 substitutions, often you could completely change the dynamic of the game. And I sometimes think that we struggle to do that at the moment. And I think the only way to do it between now and the end of the season is not wholesale changes. I mean, I've suggested 4. People have disagreed, absolutely, as is everybody's right to disagree. The one thing I would say on Scales, though, because he was another one, and we'll get to the defence, but the reason I'm picking Scales over Nawrocki, who I have been impressed with against Rangers and Hearts, is just to play a naturally left-sided centre-half, JP. That's my thinking. By the way, Scales might not be fit. I'm going by something Brendan Rodgers said a few weeks ago, that he would be available for the Killie game. I'm sure we'll find out in the next 48 hours, either through the training pictures or Brendan Rodgers' press conference, whether or not Scales is back. But, that was the reason that I didn't go for Nawrocki. I wouldn't play him out of position unless you're desperate and you've got to, and he's the only guy available. Interested to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Does it come down to mentality? Complacency, you think, should never set in when it comes to Celtic, JP? But again, we new faces, because Schlupp, I believe, is one of the guys that's in the comfort zone. Trusty, I think, is in the comfort zone. These guys are new faces, and and Engels to a degree, although I think over the piece, I don't want to be picked up wrong in my assertion that he's been a good signing. I'm not saying he's been a flop, but right now he's kind of anonymous for me in a lot of these games. And I'm going to have a closer look at his career as well. But let's have a look at some of the comments coming through. We've got Donny, Tiny Hands. Here we go. We better come alive. Well, we need to. We absolutely need to change the performances that we've been seeing in recent times. Urban Culture, good day, fellow Acsom addicts. It is a daily occurrence. It's 12:30 every day. That's not going to change, although the backdrop might. And Danielle, sorry if we were late. We had an emergency with air conditioning, so we were maybe under a minute late. We're under 60 seconds late. And hopefully UEFA don't fine us as they did with Brendan Rodgers. Danny boy.
Well, you can get away with spraying water and fans, so I'm pretty sure we can get away with being a minute late. So,
by the way, we will come to that as well. They bottled it. The SFA have bottled it. Danny boy, don't believe all of these have anything to do with loss of form. It's something else. Well, as football fans, I don't have an issue with you saying that, because I think you're watching it and you're trying to put your finger on it. JP, we're not seeing them in training all week. We don't know what the dynamic is in the dressing room. And when your captain comes out and talks about getting them out of a comfort zone, it is more than just holidays. It comes down to the fact that there's a mentality at this football club where for every minute of every single game you've got to be on it. You cannot switch off. Just for 1 minute, you can't switch off, because if you do, we might concede a goal. And if you switch off for an afternoon, we might lose a game. And that's what's been happening. So it's about instilling that mentality back into the squad. You mentioned Czerny. Obviously, we covered this in depth. My take on this, JP, was I wasn't really just looking at that incident in isolation. I was looking at what has become a pattern of behaviour when we're playing Rangers, and it's come from their fans and it's come now from their players, and whereby it's almost as if they can act with impunity. People have entered the field of play, never been punished for it. Fans approach it as far back as approaching Scott Brown. Obviously, objects getting thrown into Joe Hart's goalmouth. I've gone through a lot of these things. Physiotherapist who got a bottle to the head. At least that person was taken to court and charged for it, and I don't know if he got jailed. He was found guilty of that offence. But you've got to take all of that into consideration, and you've got to take the fact that the fans have been away from this fixture. The away fans have been away from this fixture for so long, JP. And the backdrop of that particular game with the Celtic fans being kettled and all this kind of stuff, yet you're allowing a player to cross that white line, because that's what he's done. And it's not just about it being water getting scooshed out of a bottle. I know for a fact, if you're sitting in that stand with your kid and you're on the end of that, you're not going to be happy. You're absolutely not going to be happy. If you do it to the wrong person, then it's inciting something. It's aggravating.
By the way, it would be the same. It would be the same if it was a player of any other club. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Just like people will be like, "Oh, it's sour grapes because you got beaten." It was a Rangers player. It doesn't matter. It wouldn't matter if it was a Queen's Park player that did it. I'd still be expecting some form of punishment. Now, there was 8 match bans and things like that getting thrown around, which is absolutely ludicrous. Like, that would be disproportionate in my opinion. But there could have and should have been some level of punishment to stop this setting a precedent for future attack, not attacks. It wasn't an attack, but it was just. I wouldn't want to. I genuinely wouldn't want to see a Celtic player do that to opposition fans. I would be embarrassed if that was the case. I don't think I would find it funny. I wouldn't be coming on here and laughing about it. I think if you've watched you and I here for the last 5 years, and I came on here laughing about that, I think people would think that was a bit out of character. Perhaps I would hope so anyway, because there's just like the things that you do and don't do, and that's one of them. Have a bit of dignity. And always bang on about dignity, but I mean, there's very little in that. And then to not have any condemnation from your manager as well speaks volumes about him and the standards that he's putting in place at that club.
Well, that's a big thing for me, and I want to touch on this, right? Because as soon as it's happened, JP, the narrative was set. He's just a pantomime villain. It's only water. Get over it. Dry your eyes. All this kind of stuff. Now, the aggravating factor of it being a powder keg derby game in Glasgow, which is renowned around the world for the rivalry, right? And the fact that the fans hadn't been in the stadium for, what was it? Was it 5 years, 7 years? They hadn't been in the stadium for a number of years.
No, they must have had 700 in at some point over the last few years, because we've had 700 there. So
the full allocation.
Bigger allocation hasn't been the case since 2018, has it?
2018. Yeah. So that's the 7 years, I think, that came to my mind, because it was in the Green Brigade statement when they were talking about it as well. And the point I've made on this, JP, yeah, it's only water, absolutely. But what are you doing? You're giving somebody that wee bit of freedom, whereby how far can you push this, right? And I used the example of being in a crowded bar and throwing a pint of Guinness over somebody. That's an assault. That's an assault in day-to-day life. Now, I spoke to Frank McAvenny about this last week on This Is Acsom, because he was involved in one of the biggest, most infamous flashpoints in what was then called an Old Firm derby, whereby, you had players actually getting taken to court. And my point then was, I didn't feel that it was necessary. I didn't feel that it was right, JP, that footballers, for some kind of infringement on the football park, should be taken to court. I didn't think that police should really intervene and get involved in that kind of thing. And to try and balance it off, Duncan Ferguson stuck the head in Jock McStay of Wraith Rovers, and he ended up in Barlinnie. Now, the fact that the punishment was so severe was due to the fact that he had previous. I get that. Should it ever have gone there? Should the police have been involved? I know that might be controversial and amongst the comments. If it's player on player, and, we've seen stamps, for example, JP, that, in a street is an assault. It's almost like, right, don't get involved in that. The police shouldn't get involved in that kind of thing. Leave that to the authorities to ban players, and leave it to the refs to send players off and all that stuff. But when it's players versus fans, I've got a different view on that. And I think you really have. And by the way, when it's fans on players, I think you've also got to come down hard on it.
Well, so turn it round and think back to Lazio's last-minute winner against us in the Champions League at Celtic Park, Pedro. What do you think UEFA would have done if Pedro had picked up a water bottle and ran along the touchline spraying the fans with water?
Great point.
I somehow don't think that it would have been like, it's fine. It's a laugh, innit? It's fine. So UEFA would have absolutely come down well heavy on Lazio and the player. I am almost certain of it. And if people think that that's kind of over the top reaction, fine. But you and I have seen enough of the European bodies and what they do and don't do to clubs for things that that would have definitely have been sanctioned.
That's a great, JP. I think it's probably the best argument I've heard about this. Right, take it out of Scottish football, take it to the European level. What then happens? And I think that's a great point that you've made there. Because I don't think it would have just been ignored. It wouldn't have just been viewed as being, it's tomfoolery and all this kind of stuff. He'd have been punished. So what is his punishment?
The SFA, really, it does.
It does, absolutely does. And what has happened? He's been given a formal warning. He's been sent a strongly worded memo, JP. And you know what? He could do what he wants, because he will not be in Scottish football next season anyway. So he's basically been let off scot-free, isn't he? But no, I like that. That's probably the best argument, the best response I've heard. Take it out of Scottish football. What happens then? What happens if it was Celtic versus AN other in the Champions League? What happens if it was tonight? Are they playing tonight? I think so. I seen fans yesterday in Glasgow. Loads and loads of fans with their scarves and their flags and all that when we were in recording our latest episode. So yes, you're right, and it's a great point. Let us know in the comments section what you think, though. Disagree with us, feel free, throw in your own view and let us know what you think about the SFA bottling it, just like Police Scotland bottled it, right? And we move on. And by the way, when I see any object being thrown from a Celtic crowd,
100%.
Honestly, it does my head in, JP. Because, you know, what I constantly hear is, well, what about that time Barry Mackay got hit with a fruit shoot? And you're like, aye, nobody should be throwing things at players taking corners. And there's I think Yilmaz, one of the Rangers players is coming back from the celebrations, and there's a bottle hurtled at him. It's thrown at him from the main stand. I don't like seeing it. Absolutely don't like seeing it. But I'm going to use the Leon Balogun incident where he's been sent off against Celtic, and he's handed one of the you know that they're in a wee packet, but it's like, I don't know, a recovery. It's a recovery liquid that you push in for gym and all the rest. He's been handed one of them, and he's obviously used his teeth to open it, and he spat the wrapper in the direction of Celtic fans. Nothing done. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a precedent here that, you know, you're not doing anything, they'll continue to do it until someone is actually hurt. So, yeah, great input from JP. Paddy Lavery, you are in on the comments. You're on the YouTube channel. You've got a number 7 jersey. Famous number. Giakoumakis was 7, wasn't he?
He was,
Giakoumakis.
Somebody said to me he's in Mexico now. Is that right?
I think so. I was just actually looking at where Nick Dasovic is. When you mentioned him earlier. I'm going to get on to Giakoumakis in just a second. So, after St Johnstone, Dasovic went to Vancouver Whitecaps. And the following season after that, he became their manager, and he's more or less been in management ever since. And he is currently Detroit City FC assistant. That's where Nick Dasovic is. He was, of course, a Canadian internationalist, and he played with St Johnstone for 6 years. I do recall him. He was one of their better players, I think, actually. In terms of Giakoumakis, I'm not sure how much he went for, but let's have a wee look to see what happened to Giakoumakis. He was a player that, I don't know, I would have kept him, if I'm being honest with you, JP. And I think since we've lost Giakoumakis, we've always been a striker down. That's how it feels anyway. So obviously we sold him to Atlanta United, where he was very prolific. I took part in some kind of documentary. Actually, I got interviewed for a documentary about him. It was an American company that did it. Never did see the final product. I don't know if it's out there or if it was scrapped after I contributed to it. He's now playing with Cruz Azul in Mexico. So that's where he is, Giakoumakis. Decent goal scorer for Celtic. Yes, Paddy Lavery, all good. Got myself to bring Big Sutton to the Doyne in June. Yes, I will be coming along with Chris Sutton to our Doyne for an Acsom evening, and the tickets, the paper tickets, old school tickets, will be available from Paddy and the venue. But if you want to buy them online, the ticket link is already live underneath this video, and they are selling pretty fast, I've got to say. James Kerwin, you're back in as well. I would like to see a goals fest on Saturday, JP, just to clear a few heads, get that winning confidence back. We need to go out on the pitch and put down a statement that we mean business. Goals, goals, goals. I get where he's coming from, JP, because otherwise you're losing a wee bit of confidence in this team. You're thinking, what's going on? And I think it sets you up well for the cup game against St Johnstone.
I mean, I would be, if it was me and I was in Lennoxtown right now training ahead of the game on Saturday after a defeat to the team that's bottom of the league, who haven't beaten us since 2016. I think that was the last time St Johnstone beat Celtic, probably in an end of the season dead rubber. I think it must have been, because it said, I'm sure I read May 2016. I read Stephen McGowan's piece the other day, and he referenced that. So, I mean, I would be absolutely itching to get back on the pitch to put things right and to shut people like me and you up, and all the other Celtic supporters that have questioned their professionalism, their integrity, their talent. Because the frustrating thing is, we all know that it's there. We were seconds away from taking Bayern Munich to extra time with the guts of that team that played on Sunday, and yet they go out at McDermott Park and lose 1-0 to St Johnstone. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you just hope that they'll use that as the fuel to drive a strong performance on Saturday. And whether it's a goals fest or not, you want a performance. I absolutely want a performance and see those players putting in the hard yards, and if they do that, you would expect the goals to come as a result. I mean, that's a given. If Celtic play to their abilities, they should score a lot of goals. But the basics, first of all, is that putting in the effort, and the goals come as a result of that.
See, the big thing, JP, and this is, we're data-driven. Football has gone. I think it's great. The advent of data in football is tremendous. We'll probably be utilising AI in that as well, where you're feeding in, let's say, going into a game against St Johnstone, you'll feed in their data against their data, and it'll probably tell you what the best team to pick. You're going to get all that kind of stuff. But one thing it doesn't give you is how you react to adversity, what you're like in the heat of a battle, that kind of thing that you're talking about there. So like yourself and like most Celtic fans who tune in and talk about Celtic on a daily basis, we'd all be there all week, absolutely itching to get another game, to prove that we're not worse than the bottom team in the league, and it's unacceptable for us to get beaten by them. But there's different people in all walks of life, and the way that they react to kind of adversity. Some people, I think in modern football, there's an arrogance to some players where, I'm not saying within Celtic because I don't know the group of players closely or intimately, but within modern football, there's some players who are just like, they'll shrug their shoulders. It doesn't matter. And we've seen some guys like that at Celtic in the past where it's like,
plenty.
Aye, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're just here for a couple of years until their next big move. So you've got that element. You've then got the element, like you said earlier, that it'll annoy them. The professional pride of getting beat, and it'll fuel their fire. And then you get other ones who buckle, who can't handle that kind of, and it's not because they're choosing and they can't be bothered. They just buckle under the pressure. So again, that's another thing, and another reason actually why I would make the changes that I've already spoken about quite extensively this week, because I want to bring in people who, technically might not be better than the ones that are replacing JP, but you know what you're getting on a spreadsheet, a data-driven spreadsheet. They might not get picked, but when you see their application, all this kind of thing that they bring to the table, then you would probably pick them over their, who's competing for the jersey. So that for me is why I'm picking the guys, and I've started off with Kuhn. Another one that, and it's nothing to do with the transfer fee or any of that kind of stuff, because I really do rate Arne Engels, but I would be taking him out the side now as well for a few games. JP, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, and if you were to take out a midfielder, if it would be him, and who would replace him, because I would replace him with Paulo Bernardo.
If he's ready to start, I also think there's an argument for Luke McCowan coming in as well to play in that game on Saturday, because again, somebody that hasn't been through this series of successful seasons, he's not won anything yet in a Celtic shirt. I guess you could count the League Cup final, but he's not really had that kind of, look what I've done in the last 3 years.
He'll not feel like that because he was cupped at. He won't feel part of it, will he? No. He didn't do the John Terry thing, turn up fully stripped for the presentation. Wow. To his credit.
I forgot about that. I think you put people in that at this point in the season, if there's people operating on half voltage, then put somebody in that's going to light the place up, and entertain and give people value for money, and all the people that have made travel arrangements for Saturday and changed their travel arrangements when the time of the kickoff was changed from 3 o'clock to 12:30. Not that long ago, by the way. It was only about 2 or 3 weeks ago that they changed that. Mm-hmm. So, as I well know in the industry that I work in, people plan ahead so much that spontaneous things that get thrown on people aren't always easy, and people make, especially people with families and stuff like that, they make plans months in advance for these things. So it's the players' responsibility to show up and perform, and that sounds a bit kind of demanding, but that's what we are as a support. And the trophies are great. Of course they are. We absolutely appreciate the times we're living in and the fact that we're so far ahead, but you still want to go and watch a good football match. And if I'd come out of McDiarmid Park on Sunday, having seen the team play well and, you know, suffer a defeat, I would have found it a lot easier to take than coming away with this sort of just this meagre acceptance of, oh, well, you know, it doesn't really matter. We're so far ahead. You know, that shouldn't have come into it at all. But just when you mentioned AI there, I thought my mate Ian Shaw posted a picture of him and his daughter at Disneyland, I think it was. And he was saying, oh, he was kind of making a mockery of AI, saying, oh, people are using AI to sort of cure illnesses or try to cure illnesses and everything else. And here's me changing myself into a Muppet with my daughter. Like his daughter's got a Muppet said, Emily, and he's got a Muppet said, and he's got the old AC Milan top on from, must be, I don't know, probably about 93 or something like that. Mota is the is the sponsor, and it's just funny because I mean, people are using AI for all sorts of things, and you're starting to see things and going, has that actually happened? You know, that it's getting that good that they're posting potential fake news stories, then you're kind of reading into it and thinking, is that real? But I think we're a bit away from AI footballers, I hope.
Well, yesterday, This Is Acsom was recorded for Friday night, and we spoke to an up-and-coming band, because I think Acsom's always been prepared, JP, and it's been a great platform to allow people who are probably not even that well known to come on and introduce themselves, almost, if you like, to like-minded Celtic supporters. And we've always tried to push that. I mean, probably the first 7,500 episodes of This Is Acsom could have been ex-players. We could have gone through the phone book and got all the ex-players in first, but we've always tried to bring in, you know, people from other walks of life with a shared mentality, a Celtic State of Mind. And this week it's another band. So we've had a few bands in. We've had Dictator, Tijuana Bibles, friend of yours, Tony, was in, and, you know, we've had a few others as well. So this week we have a band called Dalmatic. If you want to know what that means, have a look at. They played Tuts. They absolutely did, aye. And they were joined by rock royalty with Bobby Bluebell turning up to see them, and football royalty because Neil Lennon was with them as well. So they turned up to that gig. So they're going to be on this week, and I was talking to them about AI and how it can affect the world of music. And I said to them, can you picture a scenario, like you say there, right? Because we're getting to that point when you're watching a video now and you're thinking, is it, isn't it? You're looking at an image and you're starting to wonder, right? I think that it's got to be managed. It's got to be edited. I think what you put in, you get out. So if you put in junk, you'll get junk out, kind of thing. So there's going to be a skill involved in it as well, JP. But musically, I pitched the idea to them. What happens? I mean, when's the first #1 AI track going to happen? When's that going to happen? Because, well, when it'll be a novelty and all the rest of it. And it scares me because I'm thinking, right, so where's the human element, the chemistry? You know, 4 guys or girls in a room creating something. Where's that? It's going to happen.
Well, I hadn't actually contemplated it until you just presented that dystopian nightmare, but I'm fully sure it will, because there's a bunch of guys that I watch on YouTube called TPD TV. And they go to festivals and review festivals from their point of view. I mean, they just go and get smashed and have a good time, but people enjoy watching them. And through their Patreon, they're able to go and do things like go to the Burning Man Festival in Nevada, which an eye-opener, seeing that. And they've been to Coachella. I mean, they try and go and do different things all the time and just showcase a festival and show you what it's like. But they make up like jokey songs that I'm not entirely sure if they are AI or not, but it's the song will be playing and you're like, that kind of sounds a bit familiar. And then you realise that the lyrics are them singing about their experience at that particular festival. And I'm not sure if they've just put that into some sort of AI generator to make a song, because they're actually quite good. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm going to go out and buy them or anything like that, but in terms of the quality, it's frightening how, you know, you could just type in song that sort of sounds like a Blink-182 song, but here are the lyrics, and this is a rough idea of the chorus. return, and then you come back with a song, a fully formed song with drums, bass, guitar, production, and all the rest of it. And it's just, it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. There's going to be some really good uses for it. I think if you write a paragraph and you just know by looking at it, it doesn't flow properly or the structure's not right, put it in AI and they'll sort all that out for you. It's your work. It's been edited by them, if you like. And that, for me, that works.
Journalists are using it 100%. I mean, I've read some clickbaity Celtic stuff that I'm like, this doesn't read like someone's written it. You can tell. You can absolutely tell. Maybe it'll get to the point where you can't. But at this point in time, I've read articles where I'm like, the grammar in that, this doesn't, and then there's no name to it, and you're like, right, okay.
That's where the news sources are going to go. You know, the news sources that have a story breaks, JP, within 5 minutes, 200 different news sources have covered the story, but they just kind of reword and rejigged it a wee bit. That's where AI will come in.
Quite a lot of them have involved Greg Taylor going to Rangers, which seems to be a kind of done deal by now. It's like
bonkers.
Really? I mean, if that does happen, I will happily hold my hands up and say, okay, you guys got it right, but I just don't see that happening.
No chance. That's bonkers. And it also shows you the filtering system doesn't exist. You know, and one thing I'm going to say about Liam in Japan is he just, you know, he's taken a lot of the stories that are coming out as ridiculous as that, and he's debunking them. Now, if I'm a journalist, what I would do, and it's not hard to find out, I'd find out who his agent is, JP. I'd then phone Greg Taylor's agent, and I would just say, is there any truth in this? And they would gladly tell you yes, no, or otherwise. They would gladly tell you, you know. And I mean, obviously, we try our best to get sources, and some of them are within agency work. You could find that information out and debunk it, but doing that won't get as much traction as running the story. So they don't bother to debunk it, you know. So credit to Liam for debunking quite a lot of stories.
There's one where they led with that. I can't remember the exact title, but when you actually read into it, it all come from Michael Stewart talking about it on telly, and he was like suggesting that it would be a good idea. And then there was even a quote from him saying, "I'm not sure what Greg Taylor would think about this, about the move." So it's basically just your idea, or you're contributing to this idea that, you know, it would be it's a thing, or it could be a thing, and you're like, well, based on what?
There is no filter. This is a problem, right? There's no filter. We'll come back to Liam's blog in a few moments, but I want to talk about Arne Engels because I actually think Engels, over the piece, has had a decent introductory season to Scottish football, to Celtic. But again, I'm going to use the same kind of mechanism of looking at his career up to this point, and looking at this season, JP, and thinking, right, there are reasons here why there's maybe been a bit of a tapering off in terms of the quality here. So, as you'll know, he started off his senior career at Bruges, and what they do is they tend to give you game time with their second and third teams, and that's exactly what happened to him. So their second team are in the second tier of Belgian football. They're called Club Next, and he was part of the second and third teams for 3 seasons, getting his game time and all the rest of it. So for 2 of those seasons, he played in the second tier of Belgian football, and he played 28 and 15 games competitively prior to then being sold to Augsburg for 200 or 300 grand. And then in the 3 seasons that he plays in the Bundesliga, he's played 33 games. That was his first full campaign there, and he's played 18 games, which on top of the games he had played in the second tier in Belgian football, takes him to 33. So the most he'd ever played in a season was 33 games. He's playing 33 games in the Bundesliga, which is a big step up. He's then came to Celtic, and he's already played 45 from 49 games. We've played 49 games this season. He's played 45 of them. For a huge part of this season, it's a game every 3 days, JP. It's Champions League, it's cup semis, it's cup finals. And I just think sometimes we take it for granted. The guy was 20 when we signed him. He's turned 21, obviously. But he's not used to this intensity of playing game after game after game. And I think he needs to come out the team for a few weeks. I'm not saying drop. It's not like a unceremonious dropping. I just think, he needs a rest. Bring him out the team. Bring in Bernardo, who will be itching to get involved. Or McCowan, like you say, there's an argument for McCowan. And freshen up a wee bit.
Yeah, no, when you compare the numbers like that, it makes a lot of sense. Another thing that I'm pretty sure has been mentioned on here with regards to the winter break. There obviously wasn't one. Like, and I don't. Is that impacting on us now? The fact that there wasn't that usual break where everybody gets, a week or two in the sun, and
make sure it's not a bye.
Well, I mean, I think that should be forbidden forever. But something like that, it's like a really good just way to break up the season. And I mean, I'm not a professional footballer. I've never been in that scenario, but I can only imagine that getting to go away in January when it's absolutely horrific here. You give anybody the option here of, do you want to go on 10, 14 days away somewhere really nice with the sun on your back and, nice food and everything else. Pretty sure everybody would take it. So the footballers not having that. Now, I totally understand that they're well paid and you can throw all that into it. But more on the mental side of things to have that break. And like you said, Arne Engels has played more football this season than he ever has. He's getting paid well to do so. But I think the mental fatigue is probably shown as much as anything else, which slightly makes you give an allowance to what happened on Sunday. But it's then up to Brendan Rodgers because he was told he wasn't surprised. Like they asked him if he was surprised about it. He went, "Not really." And you're like, well, if you're putting people out in the park that you're then going to say you're not surprised if they're only giving you a 5 out of 10, then put somebody else in that will give you a 7. And I mean, that sounds like I'm telling him how to manage a football club, and that absolutely I'm not, and I don't. But I'm just saying it from a fan's point of view that if you've got the option, then you use it, And Engels is probably an example of that, where you've probably got someone who is maybe mentally exhausted and hasn't done this before. So regardless of the fact that he's the club's most expensive signing, and Luke McCowan is a completely is nowhere near his wages or his transfer fee. He's still a player at Celtic, he's still a registered player at Celtic who you would want to contribute, and I think they should be given an opportunity to contribute. Engels has by no means had a bad season, I don't think. I mean, we're on course for the treble. Engels has played how many games?
He's played 45 from 49.
You're not playing 45 games in a season where we're ahead in the league by 13 points. We've won the League Cup. We're in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. You're not a bad player if you've contributed that over the course of the season. And as a set-up season for season 2 for him is probably as good as you could have asked for in terms of experience. Champions League, he's won games in the Champions League with Celtic, so he knows what that level's like with Celtic, the pressure at Celtic Park, the atmosphere, all of that. He's had a taste of all of that. You would hope that he would want more of it for another season or two before we start talking about moves for him, because the ideal scenario for any Celtic player who you're looking to sell on is always to have that 2 seasons of really high level performance in the league, where regardless of the fact that it's a Scottish league, agents of other scouts from other football clubs can't help but take notice of what you've done, i.e. Matt O'Reilly. Matt O'Reilly's numbers were so ridiculous and off the charts. He was number 1 at everything. If you're a club in England or anywhere and you're not looking at Matt O'Reilly going, well, we should probably sign him, eh? Like, I know it's only Scotland, but like, look at those numbers he's posting. So that's the argument. He goes back to Kuhn, and it would go to Engels as well, at the end of maybe next season or whatever. And that's when you look to cash in and sort of make that decision that it's like, okay, well, this is my lifespan at Celtic, and then I move on, and then we go for someone else, which I think is happening now for Hatate. I think we're at that point where whatever it is, whatever move he's going to get, I say it would have to happen this summer. And as I said way back when, I don't think we're going to get the money that maybe some people thought we were going to get for him, and maybe he thought he was going to generate for Celtic, and that's fine. But I just think that's probably the right time.
If he does go, at the end of the season, because remember we had a good conversation about this last week. I don't think he's gone up that level that you spoke about, that O'Reilly level. He's not done that consistently. The transfer that he gets, the one that he attracts, will be similar. It'll be similar to the Kyogo transfer, I think. You know, that kind of level, that kind of price, that's where he is at the moment. I don't think he has been that breakout star for Celtic yet. So that's why my argument was keep him for another season. Hopefully we can do it. If Brendan Rodgers decides that he can't take it up another level, then we might actually cash in on him. Another thing I'd say about Engels as well, JP, right? This season, in 2 of the international breaks, he has been selected by his country and he's played 4 games. So obviously 2 and 2. So he's not had those breaks. It was well covered that he wasn't in the last squads because obviously there was a narrative there as well. But 2 of the breaks that he would have had this season, he's not had them. And then going back to his performance as well, double figures for his first season from midfield is tremendous. And how does that rate to any previous seasons he's ever had in senior football? Well, his personal best prior to this season was 3. Arne Engels' best goal-scoring return previous to this season was 3. So he's performed really, really well. He's broken into the international team. But what he has done is he's played a lot of football, far more football than he would have expected or has done previously. So you take him out. One of the stories that I want to touch on, because when I saw it, I have to admit I didn't think it added up, JP, the way it's been reported. And this was someone at Celtic game being attacked simply for having the audacity to wear a badge with the Israel flag on it. But it's been reported as such, and it's been misreported that this guy in the main stand somehow was attacked by members of the Green Brigade in the stadium. Now, I don't know how that is possible, JP, how you could get from the North Curve over to the main stand. I remember you used to be able to do that at Oakville View Park at half-time. You could just walk round to another part of the stadium. But no, you can't do that at Celtic Park. And also, I found it a bit unusual that the person in question was taking social media images of himself holding the badge at Celtic Park. I'm just thinking, what is your motivation here? What do you think do you think that there's going to be some kind of impact? Is there going to be a reaction? And the Daily Express have ran with it. And they're chucking all and sundry under the bus around this story. And what I would say to anybody listening in is have a wee read at Liam's views on this, because he's written a brilliant blog. He's done a bit of digging. And it seems as though it's, what you read and what's actually happened are 2 ends of the scale, JP. But it's making Celtic fans out to be the bad guys once again.
Well, I can't profess to have a lot of knowledge about that particular situation, but it's strange that you talk about something that was alleged to have happened and, people using pictures to sort of evidence that. I did a gig last night at Touch with Top Loader.
Wow. Dancing in the moonlight.
They were doing the 25th anniversary tour of their debut album.
Was Dan Hipgrave still in the band?
He was, really nice guy. Yeah, really, really nice guy. They all were, and they were, what a band, by the way. I mean, you could say what you like about the fact that obviously they're well known for one song, which is a cover, by the way, just in case anybody doesn't know. But as a band, like, they are like mega tight as a band. They're really, really impressive. And they covered Mr. Blue Sky by ELO as well, which is, it's a bold move to cover that song, but they pulled it off. But they were telling me last night how they were wrongly accused of playing at the Tory Party conference in 2023. And there was all this negative headlines about how they're Tories this and Tories that. And they came out and said, no, we played a gig in the Blues Kitchen in the same town as the Tory Party conference took place in order to shout at the UK government to focus on the music industry and not let small venues suffer and everything else. And a girl took a video of them playing that gig, put it on Twitter, and said, great to see Top Loader playing at the Tory Party conference, right? And the gig that they were playing was at a music venue in the city on the same day. It wasn't anything to do with the Tory Party conference. And the same girl, I don't know if you remember me saying, but the same girl was the girl that came on a tram that I was on leaving Villa Park in January with a Union flag, and somebody took it off her, and then she started giving it sort of crocodile tears, or give me my flag back, give me my flag back. And eventually an older guy in front of me turned around and went, listen, hen, any other flag other than that, you would have been fine, but you're daft bringing that on here. And I mean, she was lucky that it didn't get worse. I mean, somebody just took the flag off her, and then she had a wee sob that somebody had taken her flag, and then immediately somebody from the group in front pulled up the phone and went, there she's there, and she was holding the Union Jack at the game and going, I don't know who had a better time at the game, me or the flag, right? So that was all a ruse to try and generate something to happen.
Yep.
It is not in any way a surprise that someone would try and use that to try and point a finger at somebody in the Green Brigade or any of the Celtics.
Absolutely, JP. But there's an excellent example. A top loader being chucked under a bus because somebody said it happened on Twitter.
Dan was telling me yesterday he was absolutely raging about it. Like he like they still get comments anytime they post like Tory scum and all this sort of stuff, and he's like, he says he wants to reply to every single. You know what that feeling is like when someone says something about you online or whatever, and you just want to reply. I mean, last week somebody was calling me a Z-list celebrity in the comments and things like that. So I mean, I just don't pay attention.
A Z-list celebrity.
I don't know. I don't know how I've managed to.
How have you managed to avoid Big Brother this week then, if you're a Z-list celebrity?
I don't know. But yeah, he was saying he wants to reply to every comment to say, actually, no, you're wrong. Here is what happened. This is because I saw the clip last night. And I went to the dressing room and I said, oh, by the way, that same girl was at it trying to rile up Celtic fans on a tram with a Union flag. You know, it wasn't an Aston flag she came on the tram with. It was a Union flag, which is, you know, it's quite a contentious flag. I mean, British Sea Power don't even call themselves British Sea Power anymore because of the association with the far right. They're now just called Sea Power.
Yep.
They don't want to be associated with it.
These people know what they're doing, JP. They're looking for a reaction, looking for clicks. And, you know, as I say, I think the best article I've read in relation to it, in response to it, has been written by our very own Liam Carrigan. So go and check it out underneath this video. The Urban Culture, the bad story is indeed growing arms and legs. Urban, there is no doubt about it. I want to just finish off on a positive, though, JP, right? You will have seen, you'll remember when, you know, we qualified and we beat Young Boys at Bern. We beat them 1-0 and it was an OG and all the rest of it. But it was great. It was great to get through. And it was like, you know, after that game, Kyogo leaves and everything else. But what we've seen after it, remember the wee fan? And he was going over to the Young Boys fans and they were singing to him and all the rest of it. His name is Joshua McLaughlin. And Young Boys had him over as a guest of the football club at the weekend. And he led the team out as a wee mascot and all the rest of it, right? They absolutely, you know, they got him over and they proper made a big fuss of him. And I thought it was tremendous. It's like, when I look at that, I'm just thinking, imagine that was your kid and the team had made such a fuss over it. So we talk a lot, and rightly so, about the terrors and the toxicity of social media. But there's one example of it going well, JP, this wee guy, and it wasn't his set up, and he's probably been filmed by his dad going over, and the Young Boys fans were giving him all this positive energy and the positivity. And then Young Boys have followed that up and got him over to Switzerland and treated them like kings and everything for the day. Brilliant. Fantastic story to finish off with.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that had happened. I saw the video you're referring to in the Osborne Lions stand, but I didn't know that had happened. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I've said to his old fella, come on to Acsom and talk about it. So hopefully we can organise that in the next, because it's positivity. That's what it's all about. I'm going to finish off with an offside. A couple of gigs at the weekend, JP. I would have been there for at least one of them had I not put my back in. I've been boring the commenters in the audience all week with my dodgy back. Old days doesn't come by itself, ladies and gents. But I couldn't do anything Saturday or Sunday night. How was it? How was the wee trip down memory lane?
It was brilliant. I mean, they were all really, really sound for a start. And when I was listening to them sound check, their front of house, Baz was on stage, and I don't know exactly what it was he did, but he said to Jordan, our front of house, oh, that's a trick I learned from Martin Hannett. And then and I had the hairs on the back of my neck. And then he came into my office, and I was like, I need to ask you, Martin Hannett, and he was like, oh yeah, he's like, got to know him, pretty well. He was a somebody to be feared. You didn't want to get in the wrong side of him. And then I asked him about Tony Wilson as well, and because I've got a framed picture of Tony Wilson in the office, total hero. And then he was like, oh yeah, I knew Tony as well. I was always on at him to sign my band, because Baz was in a band called Rig. And they were kind of like sort of rivals with Northside. And Tony Wilson said something like, oh, my dear boy, we've got 2 bands we're looking at the moment, and the Situationist Art from the north of Manchester. And like, he went through this like very floral chat about these 2 bands. And then as he was saying that, Baz was like, is this his way of letting me down and saying he's not going to sign my band because he's talking up these other 2 bands, which he didn't name, by the way. And it was just his way of saying, we can't sign everybody. But Factory did sign Northside. They're the last band to sign to Factory. And probably was one of the reasons that they didn't have the sort of long-term success that maybe they could have and should have had. And Baz did say they were badly managed at that time as well, and then suffered the collapse of Factory. And they took on tours at the time that they couldn't fulfill, like the budget. If you don't get your budget right for a tour, then it's going to make things difficult for you when you go out on the road and you're losing money on each show. So that was a shame, but they were all really happy to be at Tuts. They'd never played Tuts before. That wasn't a thing, because like they got so big back in the day that they played Barrowland, and their poster's still in the stairwell, as I said to you before. And Dermo, massive Celtic fan. Like, I had a chat with him in the stairwell, and he's Man United, because like Man United were playing Man City when they were loading in, and he was like, oh, I don't even want to look at the score. And then it finished 0-0, and I was chatting to him afterwards, and I said, I just heard Gary Neville having an absolute rant at the level of the game and the fact that there was no, and he was like, yeah, it's just not the same anymore, really. But he said he loves Celtic as well. I need to go back and listen or watch the interview you did with him, because now that I've met him, it's kind of like, it's good to have an actual reference point, having met him in person. And then I would have loved to have chatted to him more, but as is always the same with these days and nights, you don't really get a lot of time. You don't want to overimpose and be hanging out in the dressing room when it's their time together, But they stayed back after the show and had a few pints down the stairs in Tuts, and they were really happy with their malt whiskey that they got as well. So
for selling it out.
Yeah, Cliff from the band, actually, when I got them to sign my record, and he kind of looked at me in like bemusement. He was like, "You want me to sign this?" And I was like, "Aye." And then Dermo couldn't believe how good the nick that the vinyl was in. He was like, I've seen some of these and they're all absolutely battered. He was like, this is incredible. This is in this condition. And I went, well, when you look, like, I always try and look after everything that I've got, whether it's a Celtic top, whether it's a vinyl or whatever. If it's something I've got and it means something to me, then I'll look after it. So yeah. You've
led me on to just to basically give a plug to the time we went down to Manchester and interviewed Dermo, and they'd done a set. I think it was 3 or 4 tunes, actually. And bizarrely enough, JP, when you're watching it, just consider I'm one of the cameramen on that shoot. I had the handheld camera on that shoot. So Jack of all trades. That's my production history there in one shot. So go and check it out on Dermo, the Dermo session on the YouTube channel. Thanks everybody for getting involved. It's always an absolute pleasure to be chatting to JP on a Thursday afternoon. Let us know what you think. Disagree with us. Give us all your views in the comment section of the video, and join us again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.